Hello, and welcome to the channel's book club. How badly is the piracy problem affecting our reading culture and Nigeria's publishing and creative industries? Does it have a direct impact on the sales rates of Nigerian books in the country? How can one describe the culture of Nigerians with regards to intellectual properties? And how do these reflect on our reading in the social media space? Jeremy Witt is a co-founder of Cassava Republic Press, one of Africa's leading new publishers. He has a PhD in philosophy from the University of Warwick, and he is the author of A Young Person's Guide to Philosophy, a best-selling children's book that has been translated into 8 languages. He joined us to tackle some of these questions and share a few of his experiences as a successful publisher. Please join us after this break. Jeremy, thank you for joining us on the Channels Book Club.
Thank you, Finlay.
Okay. Let's start with a bit of your story before we go into the issue of the day. Cassava Republic is something you started with your wife, is that correct?
That's right,
Bibi?
Yes.
How did that start, and how has it been so far?
Well, we moved to Nigeria in 2003, and we both came from an academic background, and we had no intention of setting up a publishing company. My first trip to Nigeria was in 2000, and I actually had a job interview at Unilag to be a philosophy professor, but that's another story. But that day we went to Unilag bookshop and we saw the paucity of books, and it was a moment in my life where I just felt profoundly, I felt for students at the university that they didn't have access to enough books. And this was a time when there was an increasing number of Nigerian writers being known and read overseas that weren't known here. So that trip to the bookshop, it wasn't like we thought, aha, we have to set up a publishing company, but it was an initial thought, and then a few years later down the line, we were involved in supporting Chimamanda Adichie to come, and there was this initial tour of Purple Hibiscus. And then just after that, we thought, let's do what Farafina are doing. Let's set up our own company. And yeah, it's not been easy. You don't set up a publishing company in Nigeria as a kind of pension retirement option. But at the same time, I would never want to moan about it. I think being a publisher is an amazing thing because you have an opportunity to kind of change the conversation and introduce new ideas and new thoughts. So no matter the challenges and difficulties, it's actually inspirational, and we're happy with what we have done, but the best is yet ahead.
Cassava Republic seems to change the landscape of the publishing industry in Nigeria. That's my opinion and the opinion of quite a number of people. How do you feel about that? And back to what you just said now, the economics of a publishing firm in Nigeria. How difficult economically has it been?
To answer the first question first, thank you very much for the praise. I think for any business to be successful, you have to have a lot of passion, you have to have a lot of commitment, but also I think integrity and ethics is really important. And there are a number of businesses, not just in publishing, that have this, that they have passion and integrity and ethics. And if you're good at what you do and you accept that you're going to make mistakes, but you also try and learn from your mistakes, there's a good chance for you. In terms of the numbers, yeah, Cassava Republic is not even an SME, it's a tiny business in terms of revenue. But at the same time, the brand equity, I think, of Cassava is, we punch above our weight in terms of, the difference between our bottom line and our brand. But that's not to say that publishing in Nigeria can't be lucrative. But I think one of the things we'll talk about is the fact that, piracy is a dampener on publishing companies being more successful financially in Nigeria.
Okay, that brings us to the main topic, piracy. It's a huge challenge in Nigeria, huge. From your experience so far, how has it impacted on Cassava and also on the publishing sector generally? How dangerous a problem is it?
Well, I have to say, for us, at Cassava Republic, it's not affected us particularly much. I think it affects other companies more. It has so far. For instance, going back to Farafina, their number one superstar is Chimamanda, and it's really sad for me that she became famous in Nigeria with Purple Hibiscus. She became famous in Nigeria first before she became famous overseas, which is a little bit unusual in Nigeria. But what's very sad is that so many of her books are pirated here. So neither she nor Farafina can benefit from the publishing sector in her own country. So I think the challenge of publishing, like if you're into literary publishing rather than sort of commercial mass textbooks, is you work really hard to identify a writer, a Chimamanda or a Teju Cole or whoever else, but then you put all this effort in, and then you will become a victim of your success. So as soon as you have a well-known author or well-known book, then the pirates will start rubbing their hands and thinking, we can get in there. So, for instance, we had an opportunity to have a book on the national curriculum recently, and we were worried about that. We weren't particularly, we were a little bit happy, but we were also thinking, for the first time we're going to have a kind of Farafina type problem, which is that, one of our books will be pirated. So that's the thing that, we have these, Farafina ourselves, we're not large companies, as I said before, but we could be a lot larger if our work was protected and our authors were protected.
How do you assess the performance of the Nigeria Copyright Commission in battling piracy in the publishing sector in Nigeria?
Well, to be diplomatic, I think they can only get better. I think it's very, very difficult for them. There are incentives which come from the pirates, which make it difficult for them to perform. I think we publishers, the Nigerian Publishers Association and individual publishers, we need to have a better relationship, a more constructive relationship with them so that we can work together and stop this, really. It's unfortunate that, there's a potential book duty coming down the line, which will hit us, true bona fide publishers, much more than it will probably hit the pirates, because it probably will be just as easy post a duty if it comes on than before. But I would never want to be antagonistic or negative about the government. The private sector, we should try and be as constructive as possible, but we need to work together. We know where the books are coming from. We know, where they're made in Nigeria, or you can find out where they're made in China. So it's about working with the Copyright Commission so that they do a better job and we're better protected.
It takes a poor intellectual property culture for piracy to be successful. So apparently we have a very poor intellectual property culture in Nigeria, isn't it?
Yes. I think we have to be honest about this and not sort of try and brush it under the carpet, that unfortunately there's almost a socialization of copyright infringement. So when Nigerian students go to university, they're having to sort of pay for photocopying from the lecturer. The books they're reading are often pirated, so Chimamanda might well be pirated if they're reading her. And some of the stories, I've been asking around about people's experiences in universities, and you may know this yourself, but students will go from one campus to another campus and buy theses that are not known in their home university. So there's a culture of this thing. And we really need to look at intellectual property theft and piracy of cultural products like books and films and music in the same way that we look at counterfeit pills, pharmaceuticals. Just like if you take a counterfeit pill, you don't know if it's going to cure your malaria or it might even kill you. If you buy a counterfeit book, a pirated book or a CD, it's not a victimless crime. You're actually stopping the company that worked hard to produce that thing, that product, from actually growing. So it might seem like it's a temptation for all of us, illegal downloads and so on. It seems so easy, and it does seem such a clean thing that's not affecting someone, but the point I'd like to make is no matter how much we celebrate Nollywood, or no matter how much we celebrate, Niger Jams, the Nigerian music industry, it could be so much better.
How many copies of a book would Cassava Republic produce? For example, if I write a novel and I come to you, How many would you likely produce, considering your experience in the Nigerian market?
Yeah, so, for us, we might do a print run if we're confident of 5,000. Sometimes we've done a print run of 10,000, and we've gone into a second print of particular books. Now, that's the thing, Kunle, to bear in mind that Western publishers, like a UK publisher, a print run would typically be maybe 500 or 1,000 copies. So you see the opportunity in Nigeria, because of the population size, is so much bigger than in other countries. That's maybe what keeps us all going, despite sort of like the difficulties, is that if you do get a successful book, it can sell. It's just, if you were better protected, if you're a publisher and you're better protected, you can actually grow your business far more than we're able to at the moment.
Okay, so it's not a strange thing to do 2,000 copies, 1,000 copies.
No,
because I've always thought that's a problem. Why would the average writer only get to sell 2,000 copies of a book? How far can you go with that? Particularly when you consider the overall population of the country, or maybe you might want to zero in on the reading population in the country, which is quite large.
Well, it will be interesting to see how many pirated copies of, say, Purple Hibiscus or Half of a Yellow Sun have been sold in Nigeria. But I wouldn't be surprised if 100,000 or more, 200,000 pirated copies of those books have been sold. And maybe Farafina I don't know, you'll have to ask them. But this, books that are really popular, that that go viral in Nigeria, there's no reason why they shouldn't sell 50,000 copies, 100,000 copies, 150,000 copies, and so on. And they probably do. Obviously, it's very difficult to find out the figures from the pirates of how many copies they're selling.
How is this also translating into the way we read on the social media? I know, for example, recently there was this Linda Ikeji controversy where she was accused of plagiarism. And there was a lot of debate on that on Twitter, and social media.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
I thought it was very healthy. Because it's social media, and inevitably there's going to be trolling and negativity and, sort of venomous comments. But actually I thought, given how heated it is and how popular she is, I thought actually the debate ultimately, if you step back from what particular people were saying, it was good. It was really good. I think Linda, she's enormously popular. She's very influential. And for her to kind of, be forced to have a kind of moment with herself where she reflected and she apologized and she said, look, I can do better. I just take a sort of big picture view and think, well, that's a really good thing for Nigeria, because, as we were talking about before, a lot of Nigerians are not really aware of it as an issue, like intellectual property theft or plagiarism. So they're sort of, I think a lot of people might have had a thought about that, and certainly she did, and, hopefully she can now transition her business from one which was based on effectively serial copyright infringement to like creating her own content. She's hiring people, so I think it's ultimately a positive story, and I think she could well turn out to be a role model for sort of better practices across the board. So I look at it as in a positive perspective.
Okay, looking at it practically now, what do you think can be done to change this culture we have with regards to intellectual properties?
Well, we talked about the Copyright Commission upping their game, and we talked a little bit about the Nigerian Publishers Association and individual publishers working with them. But I think also there's an ethical imperative for people that like reading books or people that like watching movies to just have a momentary reflection and think, well, yes, I could, as you said, I could spend X naira and get like 12 movies. But just to have that moment of thinking, this is not a victimless crime. This is affecting, I'm not innocent in this. It's not, it's not a criminal offence in a way, but just have a thought. When you're buying a book or when you're buying something, just think, look, there's a set of people who work really hard for this. I mean, God knows we work so hard on making our books good products. That's part of why we have a successful brand, because people associate us with good quality writing, nice covers, a beautiful product, but we work really hard for that. So when you're in traffic and winding the window down, just have a little momentary reflection that this is not a victimless crime.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you for joining us on the Channels Book Club.
Thank you very much.